Just ahead on a special American Black Journal One Detroit Roadshow, do we really care about our children's education?
We'll take an in-depth look at education in Detroit as we talk with Detroit School Superintendent Dr. Nikolai Vitti, along with parents and students.
Stay right there. You don't want to miss this very important conversation. American Black Journal and One Detroit on the Road starts now.
American Black Journal on the Road is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
For Fun gave me a scholarship to help me attend Eastern Michigan University. I developed a passion for engineering at an early age. It started off with something as simple as fixing bikes. I didn't know anything about a bike shop or where I could go to get it fixed, so I just kind of had to play around with it myself. You can't really do everything on your own, so with even the smallest amount of help, just a little push, it can get you to where you need to be.
This program is also made possible by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation.
Welcome to a special American Black Journal One Detroit Roadshow. I'm Stephen Henderson.
And I'm Christy McDonald. We are coming to you from City Covenant Church on Detroit's far west side in the community known as Brightmore.
Today's program is part of our One Detroit commitment to examine the city's most important issues. We'll talk about education in the surrounding neighborhood and throughout the city. Plus, Detroit Public School Superintendent Dr. Nikolai Vitti will join us a little later in the show. We'd like to welcome our audience members and also invite viewers at home to comment on Facebook and on Twitter.
All right, and we are going to start with a closer look at the state of education in Brightmore. This is a community where the number of school-age kids is growing, but their choice of schools really has dwindled. Here at City Covenant Church, though, the neighborhood children are able to supplement their education. Take a look.
A New Testament, a more
Samil Thomas spent 30 years on the marketing side of the cable TV business around Detroit. But it was 15 years ago he found his calling. Now he leads a church in Brightmore with a lot of families and children, some who often perform at Sunday service.
I love our church. We're a teaching church, and so we're concentrated on having people learn the Word of God.
Pastor Thomas started City Covenant in 2009, moving into a church built on the farmland that would hold tracts of housing for auto workers and their families. Most of the factory work has gone, a lot of the houses too. But families, the kids, there are still plenty here.
I was a challenged kid myself. I understood later in reflection that I got in trouble because I wasn't strong academically. I'm dyslexic. We were just really starting to understand all of this stuff, you know? And so I have a heart for education.
It's hard to be an advocate for schools here. Brightmore, according to Thomas, is an education desert. Within the past 10 years, Detroit Public Schools closed most of the schools around here.
The building that we're in right now used to be called City Mission. And so I came here originally volunteering at City Mission.
2 decades ago, City Mission offered a Christian K-5 school, but the recession led to its closing a few years ago. The school still closed, but its spirit lives on. City Mission is now Mission City, run by City Covenant, which happens to sit just next door.
We decided that we would keep mentoring and tutoring going, And so we've been offering mentoring and tutoring since our beginning. So this is our digital learning center. This is the place where our children come and our community. And the kids come in here and they can go online and they can research their homework. There's a lot of people in our community don't have laptops and don't have desktops. Their primary mechanism for the internet is their cell phone.
The storage room is stocked with musical instruments.
We partner with a wonderful organization called 7 Mile Music. And they come and they teach our kids piano and guitar and violin and cello and drums. Our goal is that when the child is going home, the next week they'll be like, Mama, can we go to church? Mama, can we go back to Mission City? If you got a church and they don't have children, you have a dying church. And so for us, the children is our barometer that our church is vibrant and relevant because young people are coming.
All right, I'm joined now by City Covenant's pastor, Samil Thomas, along with the executive director of the Brightmore Alliance and pastor of Baybert Memorial AME Church, Reverend Larry Simmons. Both of you, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what I love about that video is that it is very Detroit, right? Detroiters, we always do for ourselves, right? When everything else goes away, we still pick up the pieces and make sure that we're getting what we need. But that's not enough, right? I mean, we're still a long way from talking about people in this community having what they need educationally.
That's correct. One of the things that's very clear is that the school system can't do this by itself, the community can't do it by itself, and business can't do it by itself. The beautiful thing about Detroit is it has grit. Detroiters are going to in it, they're in it to win it. And so, but with a collaboration of all three partners coming together, we can bring our school systems and we can educate our children much better. You know, I come from African American background, I can't help it, that's where my folks are from. And I remember my grandparents and my great grandparents, and they didn't have all this fancy stuff. All right, and sometimes it was one room with multiple classes being taught, but they left knowing how to read. And so now we have children who have a diploma, but they can't read.
They don't have the skills,
right?
Right? Yeah. Larry, you've been in this community a long time. You were executive director of the Brightmore Alliance. Talk about how this community has changed over time. I always get the sense when I come here that things are getting better because people are sort of coming to the aid of their neighbors and figuring out what the future can look like. But there's still that deterioration that's taking place.
Well, I don't want to get into a long history about Brightmore, but it used to be a bedroom community for Ford Motor Company. It was built to house Appalachian whites who came at the bequest of the Ford Motor Company to work at Ford Rouge. It was a white-only community back in those days. Yeah. That changed over the course of time, but when the automobile industry, Ford Rouge employed 117,000 people in 1950, employs 3,000 today. Yeah. So this was their bedroom.
Right.
Those jobs are gone.
And so those people are gone.
And so the people left. And so Brightmore today has about 15,000 parcels that make it up, and 8,000 of them are vacant lots. Yeah. Yeah. But we, like you said, we look at the vacant lot and we say, that's a perfect spot for a garden.
Right?
That's a prayer park over there. That's a kaboom park over there.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely right. Education is the long game changer. It's the long run game changer that creates the opening for our children to participate in the 21st century economy.
Yeah. The program that you're running here at the church with the children, that gives you a real look into what happens to them in the schools, right?
Absolutely.
What kind of education they're getting. Talk about what that's like in a community where there are so few schools to choose from.
So, you know, I was ignorant. I didn't understand how important the arts were to academics. Probably like most folks when the school systems had to make these difficult decisions to close sports.
Cut down on them, right?
I was like, well, okay, we got to concentrate on this. But I remember I used to be a marketing and sales supervisor in the cable industry, And I remember we would have these brainstorming sessions. And in these sessions, they essentially were asking us to use our imagination.
Yeah.
Man, when you take the arts away and you cripple these children in some way.
Yeah, you rob them of that imagination.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
And so we believe that it is our duty. At Mission City, we believe it's our community's duty to educate our children.
Yeah.
All right, regardless to, of course, $7,500 is not enough per child, all right, to educate a child adequately. But if our parents come together, and if our churches and community organizations come together, along with business, we can step in the gap and we can take care of this educational vacuum that we have in Detroit.
Yeah, yeah. Larry, do we need more in terms of education, or do we need better? I mean, the community's smaller, but
both.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You look at education in urban centers across America. I've been blessed to serve on the Coalition for Detroit School Children 1.0 and 2.0.
Right.
We've looked at education across the United States, and there is no system in the country which is successfully teaching all of its urban children. There are lots of things that have to change. Some of this is way beyond my pay grade. The pedagogy of the classroom is not something I know. But what I do know is community. I do know politics. I do know that if we're going to change this, we all have to get lined up behind the conviction that without this education, we are dooming our children, and not just our children, but their children, to a lifetime of poverty. So do we need more? Yes. But we need better as well. And I think there are people who are trying. The one thing I want to make sure does not leave, we say before we leave this program, there are people in schools, Detroit public schools, charter schools, who are trained professionals who want to do their job, who are committed to do their job. Are there some who don't? Probably, but there are many who do. We have to create the opening and the opportunity for them to use those gifts in the education of our children.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think, do you feel like that's coming? Do you feel like that's coming here?
It is coming. Dr. Vitti, you see, we, in Brightmore, we have a thing we call building STEAM. We have been able to bring together 6 of the 7 schools in the neighborhood that are organized around teaching children technology and arts as a way of getting them ready to go into this 21st century. This is because the neighborhood, the community, this church, my church, 3 other churches partner with the schools, funded by foundations and Ford Motor Company, UAW. So this kind of partnership creates an opportunity for children to learn and use these gifts. Yeah. But we need more of that, and we need all hands on deck.
All right. Pastor, Reverend, thanks for being here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, Christy.
Thanks so much, Stephen. You know, when we talk about education a lot, sometimes we get bogged down in policy, we get bogged down in numbers, we get bogged down in process. But I think it's really important for us to remember that it all goes back to the students and to the kids. And when we started talking about putting this show together, it was really important to talk to the kids and talk to them about what they're experiencing. So I wanted to talk to these 2 young ladies who admit to me that they're a little nervous to be on television, but they've got these beautiful, big, bright smiles. So why don't you go ahead and tell us your name, what grade you're in, and what school you go to.
My name is Anaya. I'm in the 5th grade, and I go to Gumpers.
All right, Anaya, and?
Armani, and I go to Gumpers in the 6th grade.
All right, so 5th grade and 6th grade, and the school year has just started. So why don't you go ahead and tell me, what is your favorite subject to study right now?
Math.
Math. Ooh, what about you, Armani?
Math.
All right, so we've got 2 math whizzes here. Hopefully you can teach me a couple things after the show is over, because math was never my strong point. But what do you like about school? What's important to you when you go to school?
Get to meet new kids and learn new things.
Yeah? What about you, Armani?
A good education.
All right, so but what does a good education mean to you when you say good education?
Learning new things.
Learning new things. What about you when I say good education? What do you think about when you think that?
I get to learn decimals and fractions.
Decimals and fractions are very, very important. What about your teacher? How important is your teacher when you walk into the classroom every day?
Very important.
How does he or she make you feel?
Proud.
Proud of what?
Her teaching me.
Yeah? You feel proud of yourself that you're learning new things every day. What about you? How important is the relationship that you have with your teacher?
Good.
They talk about their teachers and how it makes them feel good when they walk in, and you've got a teacher who's ready to teach and someone who's smiling and proud of you and proud of what you're achieving every day, because teachers really play a critical role in a child's education. Detroit Public Television, along with the Institute of Education Sciences Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest, have teamed up for a television program about preparing teachers for the classroom. Go ahead, take a look at a preview.
Clinical experience is the experience one gains while working in the field, such as in an internship or through student teaching. In effort to get the specific clinical experience needed to be a successful novice teacher in Detroit, Tiffany enrolled in Teach Detroit, the teacher residency program offered through Wayne State University.
I went to Detroit Public Schools growing up. I see the needs here now, and I feel like there's no other place that I belong other than teaching in Detroit. I did my student teaching at a Detroit public school, Malcolm X Paul Roberson Academy, and then I closed it out here at Highland Park Renaissance Academy teaching summer school.
14. 14? Can you make a 10?
We looked a lot at how doctors are trained. Those novices are in with more seasoned professionals very early on.
You have 10, and then you have, how many little boxes do you have? 3.
And they teach for half an hour every day in the beginning. Then we start increasing that, and we allow teachers to teach for longer and bigger groups. We also looked at the way athletes train, and that's how we got to the videotaping. Turns out athletes are videotaped frequently and get critique on their videos, and actually helps them learn and grow.
One of the top concerns for Tiffany as a novice teacher is classroom management, especially since she teaches very young students. She relies on her peers and mentors at Teach Detroit to help her plan her own management strategies.
Kindergarten is a hard grade in itself. It's not just always about teaching ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. A lot of the kids have never been to school before. And I think that was difficult in the beginning, just because she was new and they were new.
What comes after 5 if you're counting by 10? It's different every single day.
All right, hang your things up.
They're full of a lot of emotions, and so sometimes when you first walk in the door, it's a lot of what went on this morning or what went on last night. Do you need a hug? How are you feeling? Did you eat breakfast? Okay. And I get to see the Teach Detroit students that's been in the program with me and some of the new Teach Detroit students. And so we get to share our experiences and really talk about how it's been going for our first year of teaching. And I think a lot of us are having, those same struggles with classroom management. The director of the program, Dr. Lewis, she's been giving us advice. It's normal. It's normal for a first-year teacher to have some classroom management issues. And even after 10 years of teaching, you're going to still have some things that you struggle with.
What does that really mean? All right, look for that program soon on Detroit Public Television. Now we turn to the parents' role in their children's education. I'm joined now by Charlonda Buckman, who heads up family and community engagement for the Detroit Public Schools Community District, and Jonathan Clark, who is board chair of 482 Forward, an education organizing network. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having me.
So one of the things that really bothers me when I talk to people about Detroit schools is people who are not from here often say to me, well, it's really the parents. That's really the problem. Parents don't care enough, they are not committed enough to making great choices for their kids, they're not committed to following through on those choices. Of course, if you live here in the neighborhood and send your kids to the schools like everybody else, that's not true. That's a misconception of what's going on. But what is it that we need parents to do that they're not doing right now in Detroit schools?
Well, I think my background, I've been in the trenches leading with many parents who are making decisions and covering our children all over this community. I think there are things that we can do within the district and that we're moving towards viewing parents as partners and part of the solution of how we're going to turn this district around. I think we have to close the communication gap. In many of the conversations I have, many times parents are the last ones to know when they really should be the first ones to know. They're the first responders, especially when when it impacts their children. I think we're creating a multitude of platforms to better engage them. We're going to a PTA district, and so creating a platform for parents and teachers to work together so that we're more centrally focused on children. We're also going to expand parent-teacher home visit, and that's another way in which parents who may not always get to the school, it creates an opportunity for teachers to actually see what's happening in the home and develop strategies around how to improve the child's behavior, attendance, academics. So I think there's some innovative things that we're looking at doing and building on some things that are already there to ensure that our schools are not only welcoming, but we are positioning our children to win by finding a way to say yes.
Yeah. When you talk with parents as part of your network, what do you hear from them about what they need that they're not getting?
They need to, in my opinion, they need to be educated on what their rights are and what their powers are. Parents for too long have been silenced. They've been shut out of the process. Some parents that want to be super parents and want to be involved in their child's education, sometimes they feel intimidated. And the key for us as parents and leaders in the community is we have to push them and we have to educate them on the powers that they do have. They do have a say-so in what their son or daughter has to deal with at school.
Right.
They can walk into that school and check on their kids without an appointment. They can go and they can request a meeting with the teacher or with the administration. They have a voice. In this neighborhood, for example, we all know it's a desert.
Right.
I was talking to a young man a couple of weeks ago. I had received a bad report that he was doing something wrong, but when I pulled up to the scene, he wasn't. They were just having a family birthday party. And I asked him, I said, "Are you ready to go back to school?" And he just shook his head, like, "No." I'm like, "Why aren't you excited?" He was like, "Because I have to go to this particular school." That let me know that he recognizes that there's an issue.
Right.
He doesn't have a say-so in where he goes to
He doesn't have a lot of choice. Right?
He doesn't have a choice. He has one option, and he's not satisfied with that option.
Yeah.
And for far too long, our kids have been forced into bad situations. And parents, if they don't know how to fight, or
right.
don't know
What are you supposed to do, right?
What do they do?
So what do we do about that from the district side? There aren't that many choices in parts of the city like this from the Detroit Public Schools. Do we need to create more choices, or do we also need to create a culture where people believe they can exercise those choices on their own?
I think part of the work is making sure that our schools are chosen because they are getting service right. Because when you walk in the school building, you get acknowledged. There's someone there to welcome you. There's someone there to listen to what your issues are and to help you through to resolution. It's part of what I think the work is for the Office of Family and Community Engagement, is to help parents be able to navigate a system that seemed insurmountable for parents for a long time, and many times weren't able to get what they need. But I think there are moves that we're making to kind of change that culture and to move to be a district where this kid is excited about going back to school.
Right. This is the first fall of the new Detroit Public Schools. Do parents have different expectations? Are they expressing different expectations to you guys in the district already?
I think that, I would say earlier this year, I got the sense, especially with the announcement of school closures, that parents were just fatigued with the numerous issues that are falling upon them, just life issues. But I think that with the energy that we've opened the schools with the expedience that our superintendent is moving with, it's the way that he leads us in saying act with urgency. I think you have a lot of energy that is focused around welcoming kids back. The first day of school will never be the same for me. We had marching bands out, and we had fraternities and sororities. They rolled out red carpet. I mean, it was a kind of culture that would make a kid want to go back to school. We have to do more of that. And then we have to listen, we have to serve, and we have to recognize that families, that our parents are part of the strategy in being able to put our kids in a winning position.
Are parents, from your side, are parents excited about this new district and what it's promising, or are they skeptical? Because how many times have they been told things are going to be different and they weren't?
With the conversations that I'm having, they're very skeptical.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to be hopeful, they want to be optimistic, but what do they have to go on? What have they been shown year after year after year after year? They really want something different, and they want you to say one thing and do that one thing.
Yeah.
But I think parents in this community are exercising power differently. We saw a different response when that school closure list came out. This community responded in force. Parents were on the front line of that. I saw parents exercising, opting their children out of testing, feeling like we're not going to give you the tools to close our schools. I saw parents who were writing letters, who were riding the bus up to Lansing, and we turned that situation around. So I think there is a lot more energy around, you know, taking ownership of our schools, and I think some of the programs and opportunities for parents to engage with our schools are going to look different, feel different, and be centered around their interests.
Yeah, is that enough? Is that enough to overcome that skepticism?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It's early to say, right?
It's very early.
We're only a couple weeks in.
But I personally am optimistic at what I see.
Yeah.
I am.
And what is it that makes you optimistic? What are you seeing that says this is going to be better?
As a dad?
Yeah.
Honestly, the new leadership.
Yeah. You feel like
Dr. Vitti, and I've only met him a few times, but with speaking with him and hearing people speak about him, it's something fresh.
Yeah.
It's something new about him. Yeah. His history excites me. Yeah. He shares a story that my son shares.
Yeah.
So there's a connection here.
Yeah. Well, we're going to hear from Dr. Vitti in a little bit, but Charlonda, Jonathan, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for having
me.
me.
All right, over to you, Christy.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. You know, we talk about parents. Well, we have a church full of them in here right now. We have parents and we have kids who are very interested in kind of weighing in a little bit on what their thoughts are in beginning the school year. Ora Williams is with me. She has one grandchild living with her who goes to DPS schools. And I guess I'm going to ask you, do you have any new or different kind of expectations starting the school year this year with a different structure in place for DPS?
Well, I do feel that it's going to be different because I've been reading articles that Dr. Vitti has written and have kind of followed what he's been doing and what he expects. That has given me hope. Previously, one of the things that I found was it was the same thing being said each year. But I have a lot of hope now with 482 Forward, with Shalonda Buckman and the parent engagement, because I think that you have to get parents involved. You have to let parents know that they have a voice. And I think that wasn't given to parents before. And what was happening also is that, as Jonathan stated, they were intimidated. So I think this new district and the schools are more welcoming.
Do you think it's also part of education that people need to know how to be empowered, that they need to know the tools that they can go in, they can ask questions, they can demand something different?
Oh, they have to. They have to be educated. And one of the things is when there are meetings that are here to educate the parent, they've got to come out to those meetings. We've got to get parents back to realizing that you are the one in control of your child, and you have to be the one that goes into that school and advocates for your child.
When you send your granddaughter to school every day, what are your concerns?
Safety is number one, making sure that she's safe, making sure that she's learning and that the teacher understands who she is and the type of learning that she does. There's all different types of learning, and sometimes teachers don't realize that. So I want the teacher to recognize her as an individual and not group her with all of the other students in the classroom.
You know, it's so funny when people talk about success and making sure that kids are successful and students have success. When you think every night and before you send her to school, what do you hope and pray for? What does success look like for you and for your family and for your granddaughter, do you think?
Success to me is that she becomes a upright citizen. She practices her citizenship, that she does what she wants to do in life, that she enjoys her career, whichever lane she takes. Doesn't have to always be college. It can be a trade school. It could be whatever she wants to do. And I teach her that whatever you do it to the best of your ability.
Well, I hope the school year goes well for her. Ora Williams, thank you so much. You know, education is just one of the struggles for residents here in Brightmore. The neighborhood has its share of blight and vacant lots. Reverend Larry Simmons of the Brightmore Alliance and Sherry Bendrowski from Wellspring Faith-Based Youth Development take us on a tour of the community. Take a look.
So here we are in downtown Brightmore, downtown Old Redford, downtown Sand Hill, depends on which neighborhood you live in.
Right.
but all of us gather over here at our Motor City Java, sweet potato sensations. Our downtown is disputed because every one of the neighborhoods I just mentioned all claim Grand River Lasser as their own because all of us use it. Every one of us come here, neighbors. I want to take you down what I consider to be the cutting edge of blight spread. You'll notice how well kept these houses are in this area. What you'll start to see, though, the closer we get to Burt School, the more you'll start to see this kind of blight crop up. Till we get to Burt School and the area across the street is horrific. And this happened directly after that school closed. So here's the old Gompers.
Don't even recognize it.
No. Underneath all that overgrowth and debris was a building that housed a Blue Ribbon Elementary.
Right in the hood.
Right in the hood. We are rolling up now to the new Gompers, the $26 million educational diamond of Brightmore. But you know, the great thing is that this school has now become like a magnet for people who want to have an impact on education. So we're going to head into the farmway. I was told yesterday by somebody who is an expert in this area that Detroit has more urban farms than any city in the country, and Brightmore has more farms than any neighborhood in the country.
We're driving up toward Fenkell, where the Brightmore Artisans Collective is, and they have created a commercial kitchen where they have classes, and they also have opportunities for the local farmers to work using the commercial kitchen with their produce. There's a weekly farmers market here. That's been a part of the new Brightmore.
The new Brightmore is people of all hues, ages working together to make a good thing happen.
It's people taking their unique gifts to contribute to the good of the community, and especially the youth.
And you can see a longer version of the Brightmore tour online at AmericanBlackJournal.org.
All right, chronic absenteeism, low test scores, a teacher shortage. These are just some of the challenges that face Detroit Public Schools. Our next guest is tasked with turning all of those things around. Please welcome Detroit's new school superintendent, Dr. Nikolai Vitti.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I haven't had a chance to talk to you since school opened a few days ago. I just want to get your reaction to how schools opened. Did we do okay with getting things started? And was there anything that you saw that you didn't expect to see on that first day?
No, all things considered, we had a smooth opening. We met with all of our principals before the school year started, went through teacher vacancies, textbook needs, facility needs. It's the first time principals felt truly engaged by the district for the opening. And all things considered, buses ran on time. We didn't abandon any children at stops. And we're doing a much better job with filling vacancies as compared to last year, but still work in that area. And right now, enrollment is trending positively. And if you look at the percentage of students that are attending school so far this year, after about 10 days, we're increasing the level that we were at 10 days in last year.
Yeah.
So all things considered, moving in a positive direction.
Anything shocking?
Shocking? No, I continue to be positively shocked at the persistence and resilience of teachers and principals and just overall employees in the district. After multiple emergency managers, after frankly mismanagement of the district, a lack of clear leadership at the district level, people came to work and continue to go to work to fight for children and to work with children. And there's an enormous amount of dedication there, which is not surprising, but inspiring, considering everything they've been through. On a negative side, to be transparent, is just an overall lack of systems. You would think emergency managers at the minimum would focus on systems development, and it wasn't clear that that was the case in all systems across the district. So the amount of rebuilding that has to be done because of the lack of proper leadership.
It's not just on the academic side.
It's across the board in just about every aspect of the district.
You know, I can imagine when you head to all of these schools and every community meeting that you've been through since school has opened, that everyone's got a little something that they want to tell you or a little something that they want to say. What are some of the biggest concerns on parents' minds as they go back to school with their kids this year so far?
Well, I think we heard some of that tonight. Safety. We can't even talk about academics if children don't feel safe. I hear that often. I hear about the need for programming across all communities and all zip codes. You talk about, I often hear the need for high schools in all communities, especially where we are at right now. Years of mismanagement, not engaging the community authentically has led to deserts in this community in particular. That has been an overwhelming concern. And just a need for arts and music and restoring of that is something I hear consistently. And lastly, to pay employees at a higher level to be more competitive. Those are some of the things I often hear.
All right, and you just listed off a good list of things. So then how do you sit and say, how do I categorize where I'm going to start first and start to tick things down the line and say, hang on, we're getting to that point. How do you categorize all that?
Well, one thing the school board and I have focused on is strategic planning. One thing that you can't move a district to another place if you don't have a clear set of, you don't have a clear vision, mission, core values, priorities, strategies, and metrics that go along with that. And we already went through a board retreat to define those things. We've already engaged the community with over 15 sessions, where almost 400 people have been engaged. In fact, this week the board will review the revised strategic plan and put forth to them for a vote. And that will really be our guidepost on where we're headed. We're going to revise our budget for 18-19 to drive that strategic plan. And many of the things that I talked about that were mentioned as needs are already embedded in that strategic plan as a draft.
The other thing I heard in all of those things is the cash register ringing up, lots of costs. All of those things you talk about are going to cost money, and money has been the thing that we've struggled, you know, the most with here in Detroit in terms of schools. Can you open a school in a community like Brightmore where you don't have one? And if you do, where do you get the money for that?
Well, one thing that we have to recognize is that money needs to drive priorities. We need to be transparent with how we use our dollars. We have to have line item budgets. We have to have revenue clearly articulated and expenditures clearly articulated, driven by that strategic plan, not done randomly, not done by politics, not done by who meets with the superintendent last or who meets with the school board last, but truly focused on children. So revising that budget, we've already started to do that. We'll continue to do that throughout this year to next year to drive priorities. And then after that, we have to know what the gap is as far as what we need to deliver to children. And that's where lobbying in Tallahassee and Lansing is going to be important. I always say Lansing.
Florida again.
I say that often. But you know, the need for a weighted student formula is going to be important. Yeah. We have to get to a point where to educate a child in Birmingham is not the same cost to educate a child in Detroit. Right. And we have to see weighted student formula funding for poverty, for special needs children, for English language learners. Because again, if we're really about equal opportunity, then you have to fund public education appropriately. And then lastly, we have to have accountability with what we spend our money on. And that's been lacking in years previously in Detroit. Specifically for a school in this area, we're going to do a facilities review throughout the entire district, understand the gap between where schools are for facilities and where is the academic standard for 2021, understand the gap throughout the district, recognize residential growth declines, and then start to make some decisions in the next 2 to 3 years on where we build new schools, maybe where we consolidate schools, but to actually have a comprehensive plan so that every community has access to a K-8 and a high school, and students don't have to get on a bus to travel 2 to 3 hours in order to access school.
Yeah. Talk a little about how that weighted formula works where you used to work in Florida. They do it differently than we do here in Michigan, right?
Well, unfortunately, Florida and Michigan aren't much different when you look at pure
right?
pupil funding throughout the nation. They rank 40th below, depending on the year. There was a bit more weighted student formula or funding for students that are special needs, but that's about it in Florida. Florida is by far not the model when you look at per pupil funding.
What is the model, you think?
Well, I think you look at places like Massachusetts, where you adequately fund public education for the most part. You provide extra resources for students with special needs. You're looking deeper for poverty, and you treat low-performing schools with extra support, not with penalties and sanctions in order to move the closure.
We're all parents up here on the stage. We've got a lot of parents in here. I know when I go into a classroom with my kids, I want to make sure that there's a teacher in front of the classroom. They've got the textbooks that they're going to be able to use, and that there's not an overwhelming number of kids that are actually in that classroom. Talk to us specifically right now what teacher vacancy number that you're looking at in terms of leveling classroom size where you're at right now.
Right, so right now we have 194 vacancies as of today. Last year, the district started with 276 vacancies. This year, we started with 250, plus adding 11 EAA schools, which were about 250 extra teachers. So apples to apples, we've actually improved. Over the summer, in only a month, we hired over 200 teachers. So we know we can recruit and retain teachers in Detroit. We just have to have a proactive strategy to do that. Last year, from January to the end of the year, the district only hired 30 teachers. That was last year. So this year, we're much ahead of that. We're leveling right now based on actual enrollment. Enrollment, as I said, is trending a bit higher than last year, so we're in a positive direction. Leveling means that schools that have an increase in enrollment will see an additional allocation. Those that decline will see fewer. And then we're going to look at class size. And that's something that we have to address within our budget. But it's really not necessarily a fiscal issue right now. It's a teacher recruitment issue, meaning we can add teachers to the budget, but if we don't have teachers to fill those positions, they just remain empty. Or vacant. We're not including long-term subs as full-time teachers, and we've only hired fully certified teachers. We're not lowering the bar in that area at all. We're still hiring fully certified teachers. I believe that this time next year we'll have a different conversation about vacancies. I think this summer proves we can recruit teachers. We just have to have a longer runway in order to recruit in advance and not scurry with only a couple of weeks, months before the school year started.
And you've put some more money into teacher salaries, but we still have a long way to go to be able to attract the people that we need, the people who you want to be here teaching, to come do this. This is still a tough job, and there's a lot easier duty available for less money around the state.
Well,
I'm sorry, for more money. Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, district teachers have seen reduction in wages. They've seen concessions, and at the end of the day, I believe that working in Detroit is the hardest school district to work in, not only in Michigan, but I would possibly argue throughout the country. So if you're going to be competitive about retention and recruitment, you have to have a conversation about salary. So as you said, for the first time in 10 years, we're increasing teacher pay. Teacher pay for beginning teachers will be more competitive, where at least we're at the top end of first teacher pay compared to other metro Detroit school districts and those that are more urban in nature. So that will make us more competitive, but we have to at least restore the 10% in the coming years, and then beyond that become more competitive in salaries. But beyond salaries, we have to create environments where teachers feel empowered, that they have a voice, that they feel there's more creativity in the curriculum. The curriculum is more culturally relevant, that it's more authentic, that we expand and restore the arts, for instance. I think all that will matter. Have to reduce class size, and we have to have principals that actually support teachers and not just look at punitive ways on managing teachers. And then lastly, we heard it in a video earlier, we have to improve our pipeline. So student teachers have to be placed in Detroit. We have to work with our historically black colleges and universities to have more student teachers placed in Detroit. A lot of our high school graduates are actually going into teaching in HBCUs throughout the country, but they're not student teaching in Detroit. So it's a win-win to bring them back here and have them student teach here and then hire them after that process. These are all systems and processes that we're going to start building to restore this district.
Let's talk a little bit about absenteeism. I mean, you can't teach a kid if they're not there in class. What do you plan to do to tackle that problem, and talk a little bit about that?
Well, one, we need better data systems. So we need to ensure that we're taking attendance every day, and then we're communicating with parents actively when they're not in school. There are data systems through phones, through cell phones that we need to maximize to communicate with our parents. And then most importantly, we have to create environments where students actually want to come to school every day. So there's a reason why they're not coming to school. They're not coming to school because the curriculum is not always a reflection of who they are and what they want to be. We're not offering programs like music, art, PE that actually excites students and builds their confidence and self-esteem for them to get into reading, math, science, and social studies. We have to make school exciting again, and not just about standardized test scores, but developing the whole child. We have to improve behavior and discipline. It shouldn't be necessarily punitive, but when children make a mistake, which we all make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, rebuild students so they feel loved and supported, not just penalized for making the wrong mistakes, but highlighting when many of our kids make the right decisions and rewarding them for making those right decisions. Those are all features, and I think aspects of school improvement that we have to bring to the culture of our schools to make school exciting and a place to go to, not a place to avoid. At the end of the day, if you don't feel valued, comfortable, and successful in what you do, you avoid it. It's human nature. And for a lot of our children, they don't feel successful in school, and that's what we have to do differently.
You've taken a really different tack to the public versus charter school question that has sort of swirled around this community.
I knew I wouldn't be here without a charter.
For 20 years, right?
There's 2 minutes left, and he's
you know, I got to give you credit. I mean, you really sort of turned the tables on that conversation, as opposed to saying, you know, help us out to the state or to someone else. You're saying, well, look, let's compete and we'll win. Talk about how that works. How is that going to sort of unfold?
So one thing that I learned as a leader and as a person is you have to control what you can control. You have to fulfill your own destiny. I can't, with a magic wand, change policy or history when it comes to charter school authorization. If I could, I would do things radically different. I would have set guardrails to ensure that people that created charter schools actually had a track record. I would ensure that charter schools that were created that were failures closed. I would have put caps on enrollment for charter growth, but that's all in the past. I can't change that. But what I can control is quality within the traditional public school system. I get paid every day to make the lives of children better within the school system. That's what I'm in charge to do. And if I feel if I do that well and we do that better collectively as a community, then children and parents will come back to DPS CD. DPS 20 years ago was one of the best urban school districts in this country. It was bad policy at the state level. It was mismanagement, bad leadership at the local level, mainly driven by policies at the state level that led charter school growth, but also children to leave this system. And it led to the deterioration of communities, here in particular. And so I can't change that, but that history and that legacy and that faith is still there. We have to actualize that and build off of that, and students and parents will come back. At the end of the day, the beauty of traditional public schools is that we serve all the time. And so if we deliver and show people and restore that faith and confidence, they will come back, and I believe this, and my children being in the system is a testament to this, is when traditional public schools get it right, they get it right better than charters, than private schools, and even, and as I said, private schools throughout this country, but we just have to get it right consistently for all schools in this community.
All right, Dr. Vitti, thank you very much for being here. Yeah. We'll be right back to take questions from our audience. Stay right there.
As American Black Journal looks ahead at the next 50 years, we want to hear from you, the viewers. Tell us what you think of this program and what you'd like to see on future episodes. Visit AmericanBlackJournal.org to take a quick survey and share your opinion. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Vitti, we have our first question here. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead and tell us your name and what your question is.
My name is Sharon Burden, and my question is, what is it that you plan to do different that hasn't already been tried?
So, great question, and I actually am going to answer the question by saying, when we're talking about rebuilding the district, sometimes it's not doing things differently for the sake of doing them differently. Sometimes it's doing what we should have been doing a long time ago, or bringing back what worked. So for instance, a concrete example of that are the arts. DPS used to be a foundation for the arts, where children would have access starting in kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. That's something that we have to restore and bring back. Another example is PTA. PTA used to be strong in this district, one of the models throughout the country, so bringing that back. So not avoiding your question, but I think sometimes when we talk about what we should be doing, it's what we were doing and restoring that to make this a better district.
All right, thanks, Dr. Vitti. All right, go ahead and give us your name and what your question is.
My name is Jerica Mickens, and I would like to know, what does the future of parent groups look like for DPS-CD?
So this, there are a couple of things to answer your question. One is the restoration of PTAs, so the parent-teacher associations. Our vision is that every school throughout the district will have a vibrant, active PTA where parent and teachers are working together to advocate for individual schools and their children within their community. We also will be establishing a parent academy that will engage parents in 3 major areas. One, to help them be better advocates for their child educationally. So we're going to offer classes on what questions asked during a parent-teacher conference, how to read the report card, how to promote literacy in the home. Another focus of the Parent Academy will be how to just be better parents, to be more active parents day to day with your children. So classes on discipline, conflict resolution, how to pick friends, how to monitor social media. And the last focus area of the Parent Academy will be how to develop the whole parent. So in other words, hard for parents to advocate for their children every day when they're just dealing with life issues. So how do we help parents deal with those issues on things like financial literacy, on creating a resume, interviewing for jobs, or English language classes. The last major strategy will be the establishment of school advisory councils, where parents, teachers, students, faith-based community members, business partners will be on a leadership team with parents or with principals to problem solve and advocate for that school and in the community. So almost like a equivalent of a governance team to work with that principal to improve the academics and enrollment at that school.
All right. Hi, what's your name and what's your question for Dr. Vitti?
My name's Marlon Franklin. My question is, Dr. Vitti, first off, thank you for taking the challenge of DPS-CD. My question is, what can you tell me as a father of a 6-year-old about going back to DPS-CD? Me and my wife, we invested a lot into DPS before you arrived. We have 2 daughters that graduated from DPS schools. But my second daughter, when she was going to CMA, she didn't have a language teacher. She had foreign language, and she was taking Spanish. She had the opportunity to take Spanish 1 and 2, but when it came time for her to take Spanish 3 and 4, they didn't have a teacher. So they opted out and gave her a class called Cultural Studies so that she would get her foreign language credit. But when she went off to college, she was at a deficit in the foreign language area. So I'm just wondering, what can you tell me as a father, because I have a 6-year-old son, and unfortunately my wife totally said no go for DPS-CD. And we really like what we're hearing, but we've heard it so many times before. My daughter's 27 and my other daughter's 22. So all these years we've been hearing what was going to be done, but again, when my daughter graduated high school, she was at a deficit in foreign language.
That's a good question.
Yeah, one, and this question has come up already tonight on a number of different opportunities. So what is different about DPS-CD? One, we have an elected board for the first time in over a decade. And that elected board is voted into office by people like you. So for the first time in a long time, we actually have an elected body that's accountable to citizens of Detroit. That elected board appointed a superintendent, myself, who has an actual track record of transforming large urban school districts. Not an emergency manager, not a political appointment, not a bureaucrat. So we are responsible and accountable to everyday citizens of Detroit. Lastly, parent to parent, I put my 4 children in this school system because I believe in the school system. So I'm not having a different set of expectations for your children as opposed to my children. And that's how we're going to transform this culture and transform the school district. We have to stop having different set of expectations for different children. It's the high expectations for all children, regardless of socioeconomic background, regardless of race, regardless of zip code that you live in. And then ultimately, I believe that a traditional public education is superior to any other education because you see the reality of life. You see the reality of the world around you. And if you can navigate through that and be successful in that, then that means that's a springboard for the reality of the world, whether it's the business world, whether it's the community at large, and that means that you're better suited and developed to be a leader of the future. And ultimately, I am going to be accountable to making sure that that happens, and so is this elected board. And that type of governance structure has not existed in this community for over a decade.
All right, why don't you go ahead and give us your name and how old you are?
My name is Gerald Jackson, and I'm 14 years old.
And what's your question for Dr. Vitti about teachers, right?
Yes. My question is, why is it that teachers are willing to say that they're forced into a horrible position where it's overcrowded, underfunded, and yet half of the time it's not even the truth? Half of the time they're actually making a large deficit over what they're doing. Whether or not they're in the forced situation or not, they're always placing themselves in a different situation. Like if a teacher, let's say, was in a classroom teaching of 26, a lot of times they'll exaggerate and say they're teaching a classroom of 35, when in fact it's not the truth. Why? Do you have a personal insight as to why they do it?
I think it might be on a case-by-case basis in the experiences that you've had. Dr. Vitti, would you?
Thank you for your question. Thank you for coming tonight, and just thank you for recognizing your voice. We want all children to have the same strong voice that you have. One thing that we're doing after we level, because you asked that question, so that's when enrollment occurs. We're looking at whether enrollment matches what the projected enrollment is, and that dictates how many teachers are allocated for each school. Starting this week, we're going to review class sizes throughout the district. We've actually visited all schools at the district level, and we're matching what's in the master schedule, what's in the schedule, and what's actually in the classroom. We're not just relying on technology, but we're actually going into schools, and we are going to count students in classrooms. We will level as much as possible based on our allocations and the number of students that we can, or number of teachers that we can recruit. But what is new and different in the district is we're actually going to inspect what we expect and build a culture of accountability and problem solve based on our expectations regarding class size.
All right, Dr. Vitti, we have another question here. Okay. Hi, what's your name?
My name is Holly Franklin.
And who's this little buddy here with you?
This is Hollis Franklin, my 6-year-old son.
He was doing math homework in the pew back there, I saw.
Yes. He goes to Kumon with Sherry.
Okay, and so why don't you go ahead. What is your question for Dr. Vitti?
My question to you is, my son is a high honor student, and for me, like my husband said about going to DPS, the only school that will be challenging will be Bates. I mean, will you open up challenging to all your school? Because right now he goes to Kumon, which has him on national level. He just took the test. He's in first grade. His reading and math is already second grade and above. So I would love to come back to DPS. I live in Brightmore. I don't plan on going anywhere, but I need my son's education is number one. And me as a parent, you know, because the only school around will be Bates. Are you going to look out at other schools to, you know, open up for the honor students as well?
Yes. So this is a good example of what negatively happened with emergency management. And I speak to that because as a history major, everyone needs to understand their past, so you don't repeat the past, and you learn from the past and the mistakes from the past. DPS once had a thriving gifted program where gifted students were engaged throughout the multiple communities. That gifted programming was eliminated over the past few years. So one thing that we have to restore is gifted services so that our most active and involved and curious students are offered rigorous programming, and not at only a few schools, but schools throughout the entire district. So yes, the plans are, starting in 18-19, to expand programming of gifted services and all rigorous programming so that regardless of where you live, every quadrant, every corner of the city can have access to high-level programming, whether that's Montessori, whether that's advanced placement, whether that's gifted services, or arts or music, robotics. It needs to be throughout the district, and that's one of the ways we'll increase enrollment and be more competitive, for example, with charters and private schools.
All right, go ahead, sir, your name, your question?
Keith Young. Keith Young, Ecotech Lab. I own a research laboratory in the city of Detroit for young inventors. And we know that over the last 10 years, there's been a real push for STEM and the improvement of skill sets around STEM. But we know also in the city of Detroit that a number of students are really below proficiency when it comes to math and science. What is the district going to do to ensure that our kids can compete beyond their neighborhoods in these fields?
Well, very simple. We have to teach to the rigor and expectations of the standards. Right now, our district is not doing that at scale. It depends on the school or the classroom. Starting next year, we're going to select curriculum that's in alignment to the standards so that regardless of the grade level or school or subject, we'll be using curriculum to engage students at that expectation, and that means teaching science and math more consistently, starting in kindergarten, and not waiting for the grade levels where the test is administered at the state level.
Okay, thanks. We have another question. What's your name? Go ahead and give your question, Dr. Vitti.
My name is Aaliyah Moore. I do have a student at Paul Robeson Malcolm X Academy, which is one of the 2 African-centered schools in the district. I just wanted to know and your plans for the African-centered expanding and really just nurturing what we currently have.
I visited both schools, was impressed with the cultures of both schools. I believe the curriculum is important not only for those schools, but I do believe that as we pick new curriculum for 18-19, there has to be an African-American centric curriculum linked to that curriculum, whatever we picked. I think the best way to do that is the genres of the literature that we select, especially for English language arts. So that will be a focal point. But I'm a strong supporter of those 2 schools in the curriculum. In fact, we just increased the art allocation at Malcolm X so that we would expand art programming at the school. So strong proponent. We just have to build the programming to increase enrollment at both schools.
All right, we're going to try to get in as many questions as we can here. Go ahead, give us your name and your question.
Rachel Downs, and I'm a graduate student wrapping up my professional and school counseling degree. I'm working as a school counseling intern, and my concern is the fact that Michigan is one of the worst states in the country as it relates to the school counselor to student ratio. And we can bludgeon kids with content, but if we don't give them the programming and the development and skills to understand the importance of time management, study skills, and all the soft skills that really will make them successful in the business world, in the world of work, we're kind of chasing our tail. What are your plans to improve counseling services in DPS-CD?
Well, right now the focus has been studying the budget at the district level to understand what we're funding and what we're not, and what should we be funding based on priorities moving into next year. We will start to review school level budgets and school level allocations. We believe in equity and access. and we believe that the allocation should be standard throughout the district. So regardless of what school you're at, there should be a certain level of programming, teacher allocation, class sizes that are consistent. And one of the things that we'll look at are guidance counselors to try to create equality and equity of access to guidance counselors. I can't tell you specifically where we will end up as far as that ratio, but it will be an aspect that we look at when we try to create better balance of resources throughout the district.
All right, next question. What's your name and what's your question?
Hello, my name is Christian Harrison. I'm currently in 11th grade and I attend CMA, and that is Communication and Media Arts. I have a question as to, like, well, first, I want to say that CMA is a great school, and we are now a bronze certified school, and we're a top 3 school. It's Renaissance, CAS, and it's us. We're very, very good, and our SAT scores are increasing by the year. My only question is that we don't really have the extracurricular classes like most other schools, like I would say CAS and Renaissance. I heard you say that a lot of, lately our students have been attending a lot more, but a lot of things has decreased like in the past because a lot of arts and band, music and stuff has, disappeared somehow. I also heard you mention that you have hired or, 200 or more, teachers and stuff, giving them a chance in the job and stuff. Excuse me, I'm nervous, but
you're doing great. You are doing great. Don't worry, take a breath.
I also heard you say that, teachers are getting paid more now. It's not as much as it used to be, but it's a lot more than what it has been. But, I want to know where exactly is the money and where exactly is the money going, because how can we improve as students? Because first, we don't really have a voice of our own. Like, we also always talk about how parents don't have a voice, but our students don't have a voice, and people aren't aware of what we go through day to day through school. Our technology is 10 years old. Our books are highly outdated. We have MacBooks that are more than 10 years old, netbooks more than 10 years old, but yet we're getting put in front of a screen to test for SAT, ACT, MSTAT. We're getting thrown these tests daily, like weekly, to prepare for whatever, to get us college ready. And I just want to know, what exactly can we do to improve? Because CMA is a great school, but we are not provided as, we are not, we're not benefiting as much as CAS and Renaissance is. Those are great schools, but we are also great too. There's other schools that are improving too, but we don't have them, we don't have the exact same qualities of every other school, and we can't do better if we don't have better things as everyone else do. So where exactly is the money going?
Dr. Vitti, you want to take that?
Sure. So so thank you. You may remember I visited CMA even before Renaissance and CAS last year when I started. One thing that I spoke about earlier is analyzing school level budgets and ensuring that there is a quality to programming throughout the district, regardless of the high school that you go to. For example, every high school should have at least advanced placement, international baccalaureate, ACE, or Cambridge type classes. Not only select schools, but every school should have, or dual enrollment, or early college, for example, just accelerated program. That's something that we have to create better overall access to, including arts and music. When I started as superintendent, I reduced the number of district administrators to put more money back in schools. We're about to do a budget amendment this week that will show that millions of dollars have left the district level to go to schools to put more money in for technology, training for teachers. And we are going to start saving money this year to buy new books in 1819 with a focus in reading and math. At least for next year, and then we'll buy new materials in the other subject areas in the years to come. But those will all be focus areas as we go into next year. One thing that I do want to answer that you mentioned is student voice. So our commitment is that every high school, starting this year, have a student government. We want every school to have a student government, and then we're going to create an executive student government so that the leaders of every high school will elect a district set of representatives, and they will meet every month, and I will meet with them every month in order to hear what's happening throughout the district. And part of that school advisory council strategy is to have students on the council so that they can give greater voice to what's happening at their individual schools.
Okay, we have just 2 more questions for you, Dr. Vitti. Hi, what's your name?
Doreen Oldham, Western Michigan University. My question for you today is this. We have a wonderful program called Detroit College Promise that if a student graduates from any high school in the city of Detroit and they are a resident of the city of Detroit and they're admitted to one of the state universities, they are guaranteed free tuition based upon their need. So here's the problem. We have a small percentage of students who meet the requirement of 3.0 GPA and at least a 1050 or more on the SAT. Only about 350 to 400 students. We have a problem. We had the opportunity for them to get a higher education. However, they are not prepared to enroll in our universities.
Yeah, this has come up a lot internally. We have to do a better job of promoting this opportunity among our parents and our students, starting even in middle school to promote this opportunity, even elementary, so that students understand that if they work hard, that there is an opportunity to have college paid for them. Admittedly, the district has not done enough to promote the opportunity, but that's something that we've already talked about doing through parent and our students and our guidance counselors and teachers in general. So you will see greater awareness and more campaigns in this area. But thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, your name?
Okay, hi, my name is Oyuki Yudo. I am a DACA student, and I was wondering what are your plans for other DACA students and parents that are immigrants in schools, because you talk about safety. And it's important for a child to feel safe, but it's also important for them to feel safe when they're home with their parents. And I was just wondering, what are your plans for that?
Thank you very much for that question.
Yeah, thank you. This is a personal issue for me as a child of immigrants. The board, before I became superintendent, passed a resolution regarding this issue. We promoted it among our principals. Please know that as superintendent, I will advocate in Lansing and in DC to protect the rights of our students. And if there are more opportunities to do so, as superintendent, please let me know. But I will stand with students and parents on this issue time and time again.
We're so appreciative. We're so appreciative of your time. We have one last question here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Kiera Martin. I currently attend Communication and Media Arts High. Far as college, you say there are students who's graduating, but they don't really have the opportunity to go to college because they're not actually college ready. And we do have a high graduation rate, but how many DPS students are actually going to college is my question.
Well said. One thing that just for everyone to understand, obviously you can graduate with a 4-year degree and graduate in 4 years and be part of the college or the high school graduation rate. But college readiness is defined by the SAT, the ACT, and other forms of college placement tests. One thing that we have to do a better job is tracking and understanding statistically how many students are actually graduating but not enrolling or enrolling in college and not graduating. One thing that I've already agreed to as part of my superintendent evaluation is looking at post-secondary readiness and also looking at post-secondary enrollment. We want the high school experience to be a springboard to college or the world of work. And if we're going to talk about a springboard to college, then we have to start measuring readiness skills and readiness criteria as defined by the ACT and the SAT. That's something that we are going to start doing and that I'm willing to hold myself accountable to. But everything will culminate to being college ready through the ACT and the SAT unless those metrics change. We're going to begin to track that and understand that and problem solve and offer students actual classes on ACT and SAT prep work and offering after-school opportunities and even summer opportunities to ensure that more and more our students are not only graduating 4 years, but being college ready. Excellent question and excellent point. We just don't want our students graduating from high school, but we want them going on to college or being ready to go into the workforce. And I think it's okay to talk about that because a lot of students have different intelligences, different interests, and a lot of our students can start working at a high employment opportunity and then go back to school when they're ready to go back to school. But having job-ready skills allows them to be employed and earn higher wages after high school if they don't want to immediately go into college.
Okay,
All right.
Thanks very much to Dr. Vitti for all his time.
Thank you.
And thank you, of course, to all of our guests as well as the audience. Give yourselves a hand. Okay, that'll do it for this special American Black Journal One Detroit Roadshow. Thanks for watching.
Of course, our thanks to City Covenant Church for being our host here tonight and to our audience for engaging in this very important conversation.
For more information about today's guests, you can go to AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
American Black Journal on the Road is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
For Fun gave me a scholarship to help me attend Eastern Michigan University. I developed a passion for engineering at an early age. It started off with something as simple as fixing bikes. I didn't know anything about a bike shop or where I could go to get it fixed, so I just kind of had to play around with it myself. You can't really do everything on your own, so with even the smallest amount of help, just a little push, it can get you to where you need to be.